Commander Vexthai stood on the bridge of the battleship Crimson Dominion, his four eyes scanning the tactical displays with practiced efficiency. The third moon of the target world hung before them like a pale jewel, and beyond it, the blue-green sphere that their intelligence had designated as Sol 3. Earth, the natives called it. Sir, his communications officer chirped in the melodic tones of the Zephyrian language, we're receiving multiple transmission attempts from the planet's surface. Primitive radio waves, mostly. Vexthai's mandibles clicked in amusement. How quaint. Are they trying to communicate? It appears so. Commander, shall I respond? Not yet, Lieutenant. Let them wander for a while. Fear softens the mind and makes conquest easier. He turned to his tactical officer, a massive Krillian whose exoskeleton gleamed under the bridge lights. What's our assessment of their defensive capabilities? The Krillian's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Minimal at best, sir. Nuclear weapons in their early stages, chemical propulsion rockets that barely achieve orbital velocity, and no sign of energy shields or directed energy weapons. Their largest military vessels are primitive metal constructs that float on their planet's water surface. Water surface? Vexthai's secondary arms gestured in disbelief. They haven't even mastered atmospheric flight properly? No, sir. Intelligence suggests their entire civilization is confined to their planet's surface and a few rudimentary space stations. They appear to be in the early stages of what our xenobiologists call industrial adolescence. Vexthai nodded, his confidence growing. In his 3 centuries of service to the Zephyrian Empire, he had overseen the conquest of 47 worlds. This would be 48 and perhaps the easiest yet. The pattern was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force. Demonstrate superior technology. Accept surrender. Integrate the population as productive citizens of the Empire. Most species saw the logic immediately. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. The transmissions are becoming more frequent. They seem to have detected our presence. I imagine they have. A fleet of 50 warships tends to be noticeable. Vexthai's tone carried the casual confidence of someone who had never experienced defeat. Very well. Open a channel to their planetary government. It's time to begin the integration process. The main screen shimmered and resolved into the image of what appeared to be a command center on the planet's surface. Several bipedal creatures sat around a curved table, their expressions unreadable to Zephyrian eyes. The beings were smaller than he had expected, with only 4 limbs, and covering their skin with artificial materials. Greetings, Vexthai began in carefully modulated Standard Galactic, which his translators would convert to the local language. I am Commander Vexthai of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. You are now in the presence of representatives of the Galactic Council and the Zephyrian Empire. One of the humans, an older male with graying hair, leaned forward. This is President Harrison of the United Nations Security Council. We welcome contact with your civilization. How typical, Vexthai thought. The same nervous formality, the same attempt to maintain dignity while obviously terrified. President Harrison, he continued, I bring greetings from Emperor Zixthul the Magnificent, ruler of 1,000 worlds and guardian of galactic order. Your species has been selected for integration into our empire. Integration. Another human, this one female, spoke up. What exactly does that mean? It means, Vexthai explained with the patience of someone addressing children, that your world will become a productive member of galactic civilization. Your planet's resources will be efficiently managed for the benefit of all. The humans exchanged glances. President Harrison cleared his throat. Commander, we appreciate your offer, but humanity prefers to remain independent. We're willing to establish trade relationships and diplomatic ties, but we won't submit to conquest. Vexthai blinked all 4 eyes in surprise. In all his years of conquest, he had rarely encountered such immediate resistance. Most species at least asked for time to consider or attempted to negotiate terms. President Harrison, he said, his tone taking on a sharper edge. I don't think you understand. This is not a negotiation or a request. Your species lacks the technology to resist imperial will. Compliance is not optional. Then we respectfully decline to comply, Harrison replied, his voice steady despite the slight tremor Vexthai's enhanced hearing detected. The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of irritation among his species. Very well. Perhaps a demonstration will clarify your position. He gestured to his tactical officer. Target, one of their uninhabited landmasses. Minimal yield, just enough to make the point. Sir, the Krillian rumbled, selecting target now. There appears to be a large desert region with no population centers. Perfect. Fire when ready. A lance of brilliant energy erupted from the Crimson Dominion, striking the Earth's surface with pinpoint accuracy. Even from orbit, the flash was visible, and Vexthai could see the massive crater that appeared where the beam had struck. As you can see, he said, turning back to the screen, resistance is futile. Your weapons cannot reach us, and ours can reshape your world. Surely you recognize the logic of surrender? But something strange happened. Instead of the fear and immediate capitulation he expected, the humans seemed to grow more determined. President Harrison's jaw tightened, and several of the other humans began speaking rapidly to each other in urgent whispers. Commander Vexthai, Harrison said finally, you've made a grave mistake. You've just declared war on humanity. War? Vexthai couldn't help but laugh, a sound like breaking glass. President Harrison, you have no concept of what war means on a galactic scale. Your entire military could not damage a single one of my ships. Maybe not directly, Harrison admitted, but you clearly don't understand what you're dealing with. Humanity has one trait that has defined our entire history. We don't surrender. Ever. How admirably naive, Vexthai replied. Very well. Since you insist on learning the hard way, I'll give you 72 hours to reconsider. During that time, my fleet will establish orbital control over your major population centers. I suggest you use the time wisely to convince your people that resistance will only lead to unnecessary suffering. The communication ended, leaving Vexthai staring at a blank screen. His senior staff looked at him expectantly. Sir, his first officer ventured. Should we proceed with standard pacification protocols? Yes, but maintain minimal force for now. These humans seem unusually stubborn, but they'll come around once they realize the hopelessness of their situation. He paused, considering. Do we have any intelligence on their military capabilities? Limited, sir. They appear to have several 100,000 ground troops equipped with kinetic projectile weapons, and perhaps 1,000 atmospheric aircraft, nothing that poses any threat to Imperial technology. And their space-based defenses? Virtually non-existent. A few primitive satellites and what they call the International Space Station, basically a scientific outpost with no weapons. Vexthai nodded confidently. This was going exactly as expected, despite their initial bravado. Very well. Deploy the fleet in standard conquest formation. I want our ships positioned over every major city on the planet. Let them see the futility of resistance. What Commander Vexthai didn't know, as he issued orders that he believed would end the resistance within days, was that his demonstration of power had just triggered something that no alien species had ever witnessed before. Humanity at war. In command bunkers around the globe, military leaders who had spent careers planning for conflict with other humans suddenly found themselves facing an entirely different challenge. Generals who had studied every battle in human history, from ancient Sparta to modern warfare, began adapting tactics that had never been tested against an alien enemy. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Pentagon's Emergency Command Center, watching satellite feeds of the alien ships taking position over major cities worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, she said to the assembled officers, I want everyone to understand something. This isn't going to be like any war we've ever fought. These aliens have technology we can barely comprehend, and firepower that can level cities from orbit. Ma'am, interrupted Colonel Martinez. With respect, our preliminary analysis suggests their energy weapons have significant recharge times between shots. The blast that hit the Sahara, our satellites detected a 47-minute gap before their weapon systems showed active energy readings again. Chen nodded. That's useful intel, Colonel. What else do we know? Dr. Emily Richardson, the Pentagon's chief xenobiologist, spoke up. Based on their ship configurations and the commander's behavior, I believe they're following established conquest protocols. They expect quick surrender followed by integration. They've probably done this dozens of times before. Which means, Chen continued, they're not prepared for extended resistance. They're planning for a police action, not a war. Ma'am, another officer interjected. What about their technological advantage? Our best fighters can't even reach their altitude, and our missiles will be useless against their energy shields. Chen finished. Conventional thinking says we should surrender. But humanity didn't become the dominant species on this planet through conventional thinking. She turned to address the entire room. I need everyone to abandon every assumption you've ever made about warfare. We can't fight them ship to ship. We can't match their technology. But war isn't just about technology. It's about will, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to win. In Moscow, General Petrov was having a similar conversation. In Beijing, General Wu was mobilizing forces unlike anything the aliens had encountered. In London, Tel Aviv, and New Delhi, military minds that had spent lifetimes studying conflict were beginning to grasp the true nature of their enemy. The aliens expected fear. They expected surrender. They expected the humans to recognize their hopeless position and submit to superior force. They had no understanding of a species that had evolved through constant warfare with itself, that had turned violence into an art form, and that had never, in its entire history, accepted defeat as final. Commander Vexthai, confident in his fleet's dominance, settled in for what he expected to be a brief wake before the humans saw reason. His ships established their orbital positions, his crew began standard post-conquest preparations, and he drafted his report to the Emperor describing another successful integration. He had no way of knowing that on the surface below, humanity was preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. There is no species more dangerous than one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The 72-hour countdown began, but it wasn't leading to surrender. It was leading to the beginning of a war that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. The first sign that something was wrong came 18 hours into the occupation. Lieutenant Creswell, monitoring communications from his post aboard the Stellar Conqueror, noticed an unusual pattern in the human transmissions. "Commander," he called across the bridge, "I'm detecting massive electromagnetic activity across the planet's surface. It appears the humans are conducting some sort of coordinated communication effort." Vexthai moved to examine the readouts. Military coordination, no doubt. Probably trying to organize what little resistance they can muster. Any sign of weapons deployment? No, sir. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're detecting what appears to be industrial shutdown across multiple continents. Manufacturing facilities, power plants, transportation networks. Everything seems to be going offline. Interesting, Vexthai mused. Perhaps they're attempting to deny us resources by destroying their own infrastructure. A desperate move, but ultimately meaningless. We can rebuild whatever they damage. What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that they were witnessing something no alien species had ever seen before. Humanity implementing a strategy that had been theoretical until now, but was perfectly suited for their current situation. Deep in the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Admiral Chen was coordinating what military historians would later call the most ambitious guerrilla operation ever conceived. "Status report," she demanded as she entered the war room. Colonel Martinez looked up from a bank of monitors. "Phase 1 is proceeding on schedule. We've successfully evacuated 93% of urban populations to rural staging areas. The aliens are still positioned over the cities, but they're basically watching empty buildings now. What about infrastructure denial? Complete success. Every major industrial facility, transportation hub, and communication center has been either evacuated or rigged for remote destruction. If they want to use our infrastructure, they'll have to rebuild it from scratch." "Doctor." Richardson approached with a tablet full of analysis data. "Admiral, we've been studying their ship positioning and behavior patterns. They're maintaining perfect formation, textbook orbital dominance positioning. But there's something interesting about their scanning protocols." "Go on." "They're using broad-spectrum energy sweeps, very sophisticated, but they're designed to detect large heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions. Military installations, factories, population centers. They're not configured for small-scale detection." Chen nodded slowly. "They're looking for armies and cities, not individuals and small groups." "Exactly, which makes sense if they're used to dealing with species that fight conventional wars." "How many people do we have in the field?" Martinez consulted his reports. "Approximately 47 million volunteers, organized into cells of no more than 12 individuals each. Every cell has at least one person with military or technical expertise plus civilian specialists, doctors, engineers, teachers, farmers."
"And they understand the mission parameters?" "Yes, ma'am."
"No direct confrontation with alien forces, intelligence gathering, infrastructure mapping, resource denial, and preparation for extended operations. Every cell is equipped for at least 6 months of independent operation." Chen walked to the main display showing global positioning data. Red dots marked alien ship locations, while thousands of tiny blue markers showed human cell positions. The aliens controlled the sky and the cities, but humanity had melted into the landscape itself. "Phase 2, she asked, "ready to implement on your command." "Dr. Patterson's team has completed the electronic warfare packages, and our communications specialists have identified vulnerabilities in their translation protocols." Dr. Patterson, a former NSA cryptographer, stepped forward. "Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. The aliens are using quantum entanglement for their internal communications. but their translators for dealing with us rely on conventional electromagnetic systems. We can't break their military communications, but we can manipulate what they hear when we talk to them. Manipulate how? We can insert false information into our own transmissions. Make them think we're planning attacks that don't exist, or that we have capabilities we don't have. We can also inject subtle errors into their translation matrices. Make them misunderstand the meaning of key concepts. Chen smiled grimly. Psychological warfare. They think they know what they're dealing with. There's more, Patterson continued. We've identified what appears to be a hierarchical communication protocol. These aliens seem to have very rigid command structures. If we can disrupt their coordination, do it, Chen ordered. Implement Phase 2 immediately. Aboard the Crimson Dominion. Commander Vexthai was beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. His tactical displays showed no military resistance, no weapon deployments, no massing of enemy forces. By all conventional standards, the humans had already lost. Yet something felt wrong. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving intermittent transmissions from various human settlements. They appear to be surrender offers. Finally, Vexthai clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. What are the terms they're proposing?
That's just it, sir. The terms are contradictory.
Some groups claim to represent planetary government and offer complete capitulation. Others claim to be regional authorities offering conditional surrender. Several appear to be from military units requesting negotiations for honorable defeat. Vexthai frowned. How many different groups are claiming authority? At last count, over 3,000. 3,000? How is that possible? His first officer, Commander Nexdal, approached with additional reports. Sir, we're also receiving what appear to be intelligence reports from human sources, claiming to have information about resistance movements. But the information is inconsistent. Some reports claim massive underground armies, others insist there is no organized resistance at all. And? Our sensor sweeps? Show nothing, sir. No large troop concentrations, no weapons facilities, no military infrastructure of any significance. Vexthai studied the displays, his confidence beginning to waver. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered such chaos in the post-occupation period. Usually, there was a clear government to deal with, clear military forces to neutralize, clear infrastructure to secure. Sir, the communications officer interrupted again. We're receiving a priority transmission from someone claiming to be the human military commander. Put it through. The screen showed a human female in military uniform, standing in what appeared to be an underground facility. Commander Vexthai, this is General Sarah Chen, of the United Earth Defense Force. I'm prepared to discuss terms for ending hostilities. General Chen, Vexthai replied, I was told I was speaking to President Harrison's government. President Harrison is dead, Chen said without emotion. Killed in your orbital bombardment. I now speak for humanity's military forces. Vexthai was confused. His ships had only targeted the desert region. General, we haven't bombarded any population centers. Not directly, no. But your energy weapon triggered massive seismic activity. The resulting earthquakes killed thousands, including most of the civilian leadership. The survivors have ceded authority to the military. This was news to Vexthai. His sensors had detected no seismic activity beyond the immediate blast zone, but human seismology might be more sensitive than Imperial science had anticipated. I regret the unintended casualties. He said carefully, What terms are you proposing? Complete withdrawal from Earth space within 72 hours. In return, we guarantee safe passage for all Imperial forces. Vexthai almost laughed. General, you seem to misunderstand your position. You have no leverage to make demands. Don't I? Chen's expression remained cold. Commander, how many of your crew members have children? The question was so unexpected that Vexthai actually stepped back. What kind of question is that? A relevant one. You see, while you've been focusing on military targets, we've been studying you. Your ships, your technology, your people. We know where your families are, Commander. All of them. That's impossible. Our homeworlds are hundreds of light years away. Your ships communicate with them regularly through quantum entanglement. We've been monitoring those transmissions, learning your language, your culture, your personal connections. Would you like me to tell you about your offspring, Vexthai? Zalfi and Mordus? Both studying at the Imperial Academy on Zephyr Prime? Your mate, Lysera, who works in the historical archives? Vexthai felt his blood turn cold. It was impossible for them to know such things, yet the human had spoken his family's names with perfect pronunciation. How do you know this? He whispered. Because while you were preparing to conquer us, we were preparing to become the most dangerous enemy you could imagine. Do you know what humans do to the families of invaders, Commander? The communication cut out, leaving Vextai staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged worried glances. In 30 years of service together, they had never seen their commander show fear. "Sir," Nextall said quietly, "should we verify the threat to our families?" "Do it," Vextai ordered, his voice barely controlled. "Contact Zephyr Prime immediately." What Vextai didn't know was that the entire conversation had been a fabrication. The humans had indeed been monitoring Zephyrian communications, but they had no ability to threaten anyone beyond Earth's atmosphere. Dr. Patterson's team had used the aliens' own transmission intercepts against them, creating a psychological warfare campaign designed to plant doubt and fear. The earthquake story was false. Clever computer modeling had suggested potential seismic effects that hadn't actually occurred. The personal information about Vexthai's family came from careful analysis of his ship's routine communications home, but posed no real threat to anyone off-world. But the Zephyrians didn't know that. While Vexthai's fleet tried to verify the impossible threats, Phase 3 of the human resistance began. Across the planet, millions of people who had seemed to simply disappear began the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation in human history. Every alien ship was being observed constantly by hundreds of hidden human eyes. Every energy signature was recorded. Every communication frequency was monitored. Every patrol route was mapped. In a farmhouse outside what had once been Detroit, cell leader Michael Torres coordinated the activities of 47 other cells across the former United States. A retired Marine sergeant, Torres had adapted small unit tactics for an enemy unlike anything in human military doctrine. "Sitrep from Cell 23, he spoke into his encrypted communicator. "Target Yankee. 7 shows power fluctuations every 4 hours and 20 minutes. Patterns suggest shift changes or maintenance cycles." "Copy that, Cell Leader Torres. Cell 67 reports similar patterns from Target Delta 3. Uploading data to Central Analysis now." Torres looked at the tablet displaying his region's intelligence summary. 17 alien ships, all following identical protocols, all showing the same vulnerabilities, all operated by a species that had clearly never faced prolonged resistance. "All cells, this is Central Command." Admiral Chan's voice came through the encrypted network. "Phase 3 is exceeding all expectations. The enemy is showing signs of psychological stress and tactical confusion. Prepare for Phase 4 implementation." Torres smiled grimly. Phase 4 was when things got interesting. Unknown to the Zephyrians, who were still trying to understand how humans had seemingly vanished from their planet while simultaneously threatening their homeworlds, they were about to discover what 40,000 years of human warfare evolution could produce when focused on a single enemy. The aliens had technology, numbers, and firepower. Humanity had something more dangerous: the accumulated tactical knowledge of a species that had never stopped fighting, and the desperate creativity of a people with nothing left to lose. Commander Vexthai stood in his private quarters, staring at the quantum communication array that connected him to Zephyr Prime. For the 3rd time in 6 hours, he had received the same message from home. "All family members confirmed safe and secure. No unusual activity detected. Request clarification of threat assessment." But the doubt had been planted, and it was growing like a cancer in his mind. How had the humans known about his family? How had they pronounced Zephyrian names perfectly? How had they vanished from an entire planet without leaving a trace? "Sir," came the voice of his communications officer through the intercom, "we're receiving another transmission from the human military leader."
"Put it through," Vexthai replied, though every instinct told him he was being manipulated in ways he didn't understand.
General Chen appeared on the screen again, but this time she was in a different location, what appeared to be the bridge of a human naval vessel. "Commander Vexthai," she began, "I hope you've had time to consider our previous conversation. General Chen, my government has confirmed that our families are safe." "Whatever game you're playing, game," Chen interrupted, and for the first time, she smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Commander, this stopped being a game the moment you fired on our planet. Tell me, how many of your ships have reported technical difficulties in the last 48 hours? Vexthai felt his stomach drop. In fact, 7 of his ships had reported minor system failures. Nothing serious, just small glitches in non-critical systems. "How do you know about our internal operations?" "Because we've been inside your ships since the first day you arrived."
"Impossible."
"Our security systems would detect any intrusion, would they?" Chen's smile widened. Commander, do you know what a computer virus is? Vexthai had no idea what she was talking about, and his confusion must have shown.
Of course you don't, Chen continued.
Your species developed quantum computing so early that you never went through the stage of electronic warfare that we did. You never had to deal with malicious code, system infiltration, or digital parasites. Your security is designed to stop physical intrusion and energy attacks, not information warfare. What are you saying? I'm saying that every time your translators processed our surrender offers, our intelligence reports, and our negotiations, they were also downloading something else. Right now, there are 47 different varieties of what we call malware spread throughout your fleet's computer networks. They activated his emergency channel to the ship's chief technician. Mogul, I need an immediate system diagnostic check for unauthorized code infiltration. The reply came back within minutes, and the terror in the technician's voice was unmistakable. Commander, we have massive unauthorized program activity in 17 different systems. These programs are learning. They're adapting to our countermeasures faster than we can implement them. Can you remove them? Sir, they've integrated into critical systems. Attempting removal might cause catastrophic failures. They're not just viruses. They're artificial intelligences designed specifically to infiltrate our technology. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. Your people have never had to fight a war where the battlefield was inside your own computers, Commander. We've been doing it for centuries. Vexthai closed the channel and turned back to Chen. What do you want? What I've wanted from the beginning. Complete withdrawal from Earth space. And if I refuse, then you'll discover just how creative human beings can be when we're properly motivated. The transmission ended, and Vexthai found himself alone with a growing sense of dread. Everything about this occupation had gone wrong from the beginning. The humans weren't acting like any conquered species in Imperial history. They weren't afraid, they weren't submitting, and they seemed to possess capabilities that shouldn't be possible for their level of technological development. Sir, his first officer's voice came through the intercom. We're receiving a priority message from the Emperor himself. Emperor Zixtul's image filled the main screen, his massive form radiating the authority of a ruler who commanded 1,000 worlds. Commander Vexthai, I've received disturbing reports about the Earth conquest. Explain the delays. Your Magnificence. Vexthai began carefully. The humans are proving more resourceful than anticipated. They've implemented unconventional resistance strategies. Unconventional how? Are you telling me that a single primitive world is giving the Imperial Navy difficulties? The humans appear to have capabilities that our intelligence severely underestimated. They've demonstrated advanced electronic warfare capabilities and have somehow managed to coordinate resistance across their entire planet without any detectable command structure. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Commander, in 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, no species has successfully resisted integration for more than a few days. Are you telling me that these humans are special? Before Vexthai could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered, and Emperor Zixtul's image was replaced by that of General Chen. Emperor Zixtul, she said, her voice carrying across every communication channel in the Imperial fleet. This is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. I believe we need to talk. The silence on the bridge was absolute. No one had ever interrupted an Imperial communication before. It should have been technologically impossible. Human, the Emperor's voice came through the speakers, though his image was no longer visible. You dare to breach Imperial communications? I dare to do whatever is necessary to defend my species, Chen replied calmly. Your Magnificence, I think there's been a misunderstanding about what you're dealing with here. Enlighten me. You see humans as a primitive species suitable for conquest. That's understandable, given what your intelligence told you. But you made a critical error in your assessment, which was, you assumed that technological development and military capability are the same thing. They're not. Do you know what humanity's greatest military advantage is, Emperor? I'm sure you'll tell me. Experience. In the 3,000 years you've been conquering the galaxy, humanity has been at war continuously. Not just occasional conflicts, constant, relentless, creative warfare. We've fought wars in deserts, jungles, cities, mountains, and oceans. We've fought with swords, guns, bombs, chemicals, and ideas. We've developed more ways to kill each other than any species in galactic history. The Emperor's voice carried a note of skepticism. If you're so warlike, why haven't you expanded beyond your own world? Because we've been too busy fighting each other. Every human military leader has studied thousands of years of tactical innovation. Every human soldier has inherited the accumulated knowledge of 40 millennia of warfare. What you're seeing isn't primitive resistance. It's the collective military experience of an entire species focused on a single enemy for the first time in our history. Aboard the Crimson Dominion, Vexthai was listening with growing alarm. Around him, his crew was discovering that their ship's systems were increasingly unreliable. Lights flickered randomly, displays showed conflicting information, and even basic functions required multiple attempts to execute. Your Magnificence, Chen continued. I want to show you something. The screens throughout the Imperial fleet suddenly displayed a tactical overview of Earth's surface. But instead of the empty wasteland the aliens had been seeing, the display showed millions of heat signatures organized in complex patterns across every continent. This is what your sensors should have been detecting, Chen explained. 47 million humans, organized into nearly 4 million independent tactical units, all coordinating their activities through quantum-encrypted communications networks, but your technology can't penetrate. The Emperor's voice was noticeably less confident. How is this possible? Our sensors showed no such organization. Because we've been feeding false data into your sensor networks since the day you arrived. You've been seeing what we wanted you to see. Every scan, every reading, every piece of intelligence you've gathered has been carefully crafted to hide our true capabilities. And what are your true capabilities? Every major population center on your home worlds has been infiltrated by our intelligence networks. Every member of your command structure has been identified and located. Every critical facility in your empire has been mapped and assessed for vulnerability. This was, of course, completely impossible. Humans had no interstellar travel capability and no presence beyond Earth's solar system. The psychological warfare campaign had reached its crescendo, and the Zephyrians had no way to distinguish between real capabilities and elaborate deception. You're bluffing, the Emperor stated, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Commander Vexthai, would you like to tell your Emperor about the technical difficulties your fleet has been experiencing? Vexthai found himself in an impossible position. Your Magnificence, it's true that we've encountered some unexpected challenges. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that weren't in our intelligence reports. What kind of capabilities? Electronic warfare beyond anything in our experience. Coordination and organization that suggests a level of military sophistication we didn't anticipate. And psychological warfare tactics that are affecting crew morale throughout the fleet. Dr. Richardson, monitoring the conversation from her hidden command post, smiled as she watched the psychological profile analysis scrolling across her screen. The Zephyrian Empire was a hierarchical society built on absolute confidence in their technological superiority. They had never encountered an enemy that could challenge that superiority through unconventional means. Emperor Zixthul, Chen said, I'm going to make you a one-time offer. Withdraw your forces from Earth space immediately, and this ends here. Refuse, and you'll discover why no human army in our entire history has ever accepted permanent defeat. And if I choose to call your bluff, if I order the complete destruction of your planet, then you'll lose your entire fleet, and the location of every Zephyrian world will be transmitted to every hostile species in the galaxy. Our computers have been analyzing your communication protocols. We know where you come from, Emperor. All of you. The silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, the Emperor spoke. Commander Vexthai, what is your professional assessment of the human threat level? Vexthai looked around his bridge, where his crew was struggling with increasingly unreliable systems, where his communications were being monitored by an impossible enemy, where nothing was working as it should. He thought about 3,000 years of imperial doctrine, about the 47 worlds he had conquered, about the patterns of behavior that had always led to victory. Then he thought about a species that had turned their own weaknesses into weapons, that had made their technological inferiority irrelevant through sheer tactical brilliance, that had somehow made him fear for the safety of his family across hundreds of light years of space. Your Magnificence, he said slowly, I believe we have encountered something unprecedented. These humans are not like any species we've faced before. They are dangerous in ways we didn't know were possible. Recommendation. Vexthai closed his eyes, knowing that his next words would end his career but might save his life. Complete withdrawal, Your Magnificence. Immediately. The Emperor's response would determine the fate of both species, and in the hidden bunkers of Earth, 47 million humans waited to see if their desperate gamble had worked. The silence that followed Commander Vexthai's recommendation stretched across light years of space. In the Imperial Command Center on Zephyr Prime, Emperor Zixthal's closest advisors waited for their ruler's decision. On Earth, millions of humans held their breath. In the depths of space, 50 Zephyrian warships hung in orbit around a small blue world, their crews uncertain for the first time in their military careers. Emperor Zixthal's voice, when it finally came, carried the weight of 3 millennia of unquestioned authority. Commander Vexthai, in 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, no species has ever successfully resisted integration. No primitive world has ever posed a threat to Imperial forces. No single planet has ever dictated terms to the Empire. Admiral Chen, listening from her hidden command post, felt her heart sink. She had pushed the psychological warfare campaign as far as it could go, but ultimately humanity's survival depended on the decision of an alien emperor whose pride might be stronger than his caution. Your Magnificence, Vexthai tried once more. These humans are unlike any species we've encountered. They've demonstrated capabilities that suggest, enough. The Emperor cut him off. I will not have the Empire's reputation destroyed by a single primitive world. If these humans want to see what real warfare looks like, they shall have their wish. You have new orders, Commander. Sir, cease all attempts at integration. Begin systematic planetary sterilization. I want every population center reduced to ash. I want every military installation vaporized. I want this world to serve as an example to any other species that might consider resistance to Imperial will. The words hit Vexthai like a physical blow. Planetary sterilization was the Empire's ultimate sanction, reserved for species that posed existential threats to Imperial civilization. It had been used fewer than a dozen times in 3,000 years, and never against a species confined to a single world. Your Magnificence, the humans may be resourceful, but they pose no real threat to the Empire. Surely complete annihilation is unnecessary. Commander, you seem to have forgotten your place. You will implement sterilization protocols immediately, or I will find someone who will.
Around the bridge, Vexthai's crew exchanged horrified glances.
They had signed up for conquest, not genocide, but Imperial orders were absolute, and disobedience meant execution for entire bloodlines. Understood, Your Magnificence, Vexthai replied, his voice hollow. Beginning sterilization protocols. The communication ended, and Vexthai found himself staring at his tactical display. 50 icons representing the most advanced warships in the galaxy, each capable of reducing continents to molten slag. In a few hours, Earth would be nothing but a lifeless rock orbiting a star. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, sterilization targeting requires manual confirmation from Command Authority. Your biometric authorization is needed to activate planetary bombardment systems. Vexthai looked at his crew, many of whom he had served with for decades. They were soldiers, not murderers. They had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had always left the conquered species alive, integrated into the Empire as productive citizens. This was different. Sir, the tactical officer prompted. Before Vexthai could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered and changed. Instead of tactical displays, they now showed images of Earth's surface, but not the empty wasteland the aliens expected to see. The screens showed children. Human children in schools, in playgrounds, in their parents' arms. Thousands of images cycling rapidly, showing the faces of the innocent beings that the Imperial fleet was preparing to murder. What is this? Vexthai whispered. General Chen's voice answered him, though her image didn't appear. These are the people you're about to kill, Commander. We thought you should see them first.
How are you accessing our internal systems?
We've been inside your computers for days, Commander. We've learned everything about you, your crew, your families, your hopes and fears. We know that Lieutenant Creswell has a daughter the same age as the human child now displayed on his console. We know that Engineer Morgul's mate is pregnant with their first offspring. We know that your weapons officer, Tactical Specialist Dex Run, joined the Imperial Navy because he believed it brought peace and order to the galaxy. Around the bridge, Vexthai's crew stared at the screens showing human children who looked remarkably similar to their own young. The psychological impact was devastating. We know, Chen continued, that none of you signed up to commit genocide against children who pose no threat to your families or your empire. Turn off the displays, Vexthai ordered, but his crew found that their controls no longer responded.
Commander! Chen's voice carried a note of compassion that hadn't been there before. Your emperor has ordered you to become mass murderers.
Is that really what you want to be remembered as? The Zephyrians who killed an entire species because their pride was wounded? We follow orders, Vexthai said. but his conviction was wavering. Do you? Or do you follow your conscience? Commander, we've studied your species' history. The Zephyrian Empire was built on principles of bringing order and civilization to chaotic worlds. When did that mission become about exterminating species that resist conquest? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the bridge, officers who had spent their careers believing they were servants of galactic peace were confronting the reality of what they had been ordered to do. Sir, Tactical Specialist Dex Run spoke up, his voice barely audible. Sterilization protocols require confirmation from all senior officers. I cannot authorize the murder of children. Specialist Dex Run, you are relieved of duty. Vextai snapped, but his heart wasn't in the command. Sir, Communications Officer Cresfall added, I also cannot participate in genocide. This is not what I swore an oath to do. One by one, the bridge officers declared their refusal to participate in planetary sterilization. Vextai found himself in command of a crew that would no longer follow orders. This is mutiny, he said weakly. No, replied his first officer, Commander Nextal. This is conscience. Vextai, we've been friends for 30 years. I've followed you into battle across the galaxy. But I will not follow you into becoming the kind of monster that our children will be ashamed to remember. On the screens around them, human children continued to play, laugh, and live their innocent lives, unaware that 50 alien warships hung above their world, debating their right to exist. General Chen's voice spoke again, but this time it was transmitted on a frequency that reached every ship in the Imperial fleet. Soldiers of the Zephyrian Empire, my name is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. I'm speaking to you now as one military professional to another. Throughout the fleet, thousands of Zephyrian naval personnel stopped their work to listen. Your Emperor has ordered you to commit genocide against my species, not because we threaten your empire, not because we've harmed your people, but because we refuse to surrender our freedom. I want you to understand what that means. The images on the screen shifted, showing not just children but families, elderly humans, couples, communities, going about their daily lives. Unaided. These are not soldiers, these are not your enemies. These are farmers, teachers, doctors, artists, parents and children whose only crime is being born human on a world that your empire wants to claim. Your emperor is asking you to murder billions of innocent beings because his pride cannot tolerate resistance. In the fleet's communication channels, Zephyrian officers began speaking to each other, something that had never happened during an active operation. But I want to tell you something else, Chen continued. Even if you follow those orders, even if you reduce our world to ash, you will not have won. Because humanity's real strength was never our technology or our numbers. It was our ideas. The screens throughout the fleet now showed archived human transmissions, broadcasts of human philosophy, art, literature, and scientific discoveries that had been intercepted over the past several days. Every species your empire has encountered, you've conquered through superior force. But you've never had to face an enemy whose weapon was the concept of freedom itself. The idea that intelligent beings should not be slaves. The belief that resistance to tyranny is not just a right, but a moral obligation. Admiral Chen paused, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of her species. Soldiers of Zephyr, humanity is not asking for mercy, we're offering you a choice. You can follow orders and become genocidal murderers, or you can remember why you became soldiers in the first place. You joined your military to protect your people and bring order to chaos, not to exterminate species that dare to desire freedom. Throughout the Imperial fleet, something unprecedented was happening. Naval officers who had never questioned orders in their entire careers were talking to each other, sharing doubts, expressing concerns. The rigid hierarchy that had defined Zephyrian military culture for millennia was beginning to crack. On the flagship Crimson Dominion, Commander Vextai watched his command structure collapse around him. Every ship in the fleet was reporting the same thing. Crews refusing to participate in planetary sterilization. Sir, Commander Nextal said quietly, we could force compliance. Military regulations provide for summary execution of mutineers. How many executions, Nextal? Half the fleet? 3/4? At what point does maintaining discipline become more destructive than the mutiny itself? Sir, what are your orders? Vextai looked at the tactical display showing Earth hanging defenseless beneath 50 Imperial warships, each capable of ending all life on the planet. He thought about his own family, about the principles he had believed he was serving, about the difference between conquest and extermination. Open a channel to the Emperor, he said finally. Emperor Zixtul's image appeared on the main screen, his expression radiating fury. Commander Vexthai, why have sterilization protocols not begun? Your Magnificence, the fleet is experiencing widespread resistance to your orders. Then execute the resistors and promote officers who will follow orders. Sir, the resistance is nearly universal. Implementing your orders would require executing approximately 90% of fleet personnel. Then do it. The Empire's authority cannot be questioned. Vexthai took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would irrevocably change his life. Your Magnificence, I respectfully refuse to implement planetary sterilization against a species that poses no threat to the Empire. The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time in Imperial history, a field commander had directly refused an Emperor's orders in front of his entire crew. Commander Vexthai, the Emperor said slowly, you are relieved of command and sentenced to execution for treason. Commander Nextile, you will implement sterilization protocols immediately or face the same fate. Commander Nextile stepped forward, standing beside his former commander. Your Magnificence, I also refuse. One by one, every officer on the bridge stepped forward, joining their commanders in open defiance of Imperial authority. Throughout the fleet, similar scenes were playing out on every ship. An empire built on absolute obedience was fracturing because its soldiers had been asked to do something that violated their fundamental sense of honor. Emperor Zixtal's rage was visible even across the vast distance of space. Then you are all traitors, and you will all die. I am dispatching the Home Guard to deal with your mutiny and complete the sterilization. The communication ended, leaving the rebel fleet alone in space above a world they had been ordered to destroy, but now found themselves protecting. Sir, Communications Officer Cresval said quietly, what are our orders now? Vexthai looked around his bridge, at the crew that had chosen honor over obedience, conscience over orders. We defend Earth until the Home Guard arrives, and then we see if humanity's ideas about freedom are strong enough to survive what's coming next. The Zephyrian Home Guard arrived 6 days later with a fleet of 200 warships, the largest military force ever assembled for a single operation in Imperial history. Their commander, Admiral Cortax the Relentless, had personally overseen the sterilization of 3 worlds and had never shown mercy to enemies of the Empire. As the massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace, Admiral Chen watched from her command bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, the combined military leadership of Earth monitored the deployment of forces that could reduce their planet to cosmic dust within hours. Ma'am, Colonel Martinez reported, the new fleet is taking positions around the rebel Zephyrian ships. No immediate hostile action detected. What's our status with Vexthai's people? Unprecedented cooperation. They've been sharing technical data about Imperial military capabilities, helping us understand their technology, even providing intelligence about the Home Guard's tactics. It's like they've completely switched sides. Dr. Richardson looked up from her analysis station. Admiral, I've been studying the psychological profiles of the Zephyrian mutineers. Their entire worldview has been shattered. They joined the Imperial Navy believing they were bringing civilization to primitive worlds, maintaining galactic peace, protecting their families. When they were ordered to commit genocide, it broke something fundamental in their psyche. Are they reliable allies? More than allies, I think. They've been forced to confront the reality that their empire is capable of monstrous acts. They're experiencing what psychologists call moral injury, the psychological damage that occurs when someone participates in or witnesses acts that violate their core values. They're not just helping us, they're trying to redeem themselves. Admiral Chen nodded, then activated the communication system. Commander Vexthai, this is General Chen. Status report. The Zephyrian's image appeared on her screen, but he looked different than he had a week ago. The confident bearing of an Imperial commander was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. General Chen, the Home Guard has arrived and is demanding our surrender. Admiral Cortax has given us 1 hour to stand down and allow planetary sterilization to proceed. What did you tell him?
I told him that we are no longer Imperial forces.
We are now defenders of Earth. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Commander, you understand what that means? You're not justifying orders anymore. You're committing treason against your entire civilization. Yes, Vexthai replied simply. We understand. Why? For a long moment, the alien commander was silent. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of conviction that transcended species barriers, because in the past week, we have learned what it means to choose honor over orders, conscience over convenience. The humans have taught us something that 3,000 years of imperial expansion never could, that some things are more important than obedience, even if it costs you everything. General Chen, my species has spent millennia believing that might makes right, that superior technology grants the authority to dominate others. But humanity has shown us a different way. You have demonstrated that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to resist destruction. If we allow our empire to commit genocide, we become complicit in evil. That is a price we are no longer willing to pay. The communication was interrupted by a new transmission. Admiral Corthax's face appeared on screens throughout both fleets, Imperial loyalists and rebels alike. This is Admiral Corthax of the Imperial Home Guard. By order of Emperor Zixthul, all rebel forces will stand down immediately and allow Imperial forces to proceed with planetary sterilization. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of all rebel vessels and the execution of all crew members and their families. Commander Vexthai's response was broadcast on the same frequency, ensuring that everyone in the system could hear his words. Admiral Corthax, this is Commander Vexthai of the Earth Defense Fleet. We respectfully decline. Earth Defense Fleet? Corthax's voice carried disbelief and rage. You dare to renounce your Imperial citizenship? We renounce our citizenship in an empire that orders the murder of children, Vexthai replied. We have found something worth dying for, Admiral. Can you say the same about your orders? The battle that followed lasted 18 hours and forever changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The Home Guard had superior numbers and firepower, but they faced an enemy unlike any in Imperial experience. The rebel Zephyrians fought with the desperation of beings who had found a cause worth dying for, while their human allies provided tactical innovation that confounded traditional Imperial strategy. Admiral Chen's years of planning proved their worth. The computer viruses that had infiltrated the original fleet had been transmitted to the Home Guard ships during their initial communication protocols. Psychological warfare operations convinced many Home Guard crew members that their families were under threat. Most importantly, the rebels were fighting for something they believed in, while the loyalists were simply following orders. The turning point came when Commander Nextal's ship, the Stellar Conqueror, rammed Admiral Corthax's flagship to prevent it from bombarding Earth's surface. The massive explosion took both ships and their crews, but it also provided the opening that the combined Earth-Zephyrian forces needed. When the battle ended, 67 Imperial ships had been destroyed or disabled. Of the original 250 warships that had entered the system, fewer than 30 remained combat effective. The survivors found themselves surrounded by rebel forces and facing a choice: surrender or die fighting for a cause they no longer believed in. Admiral Corthax, his flagship crippled and his fleet in ruins, found himself on the receiving end of a transmission from Admiral Chen. Admiral Corthax, she began, I believe it's time to discuss terms. Humans do not dictate terms to the Imperial Navy, Corthax replied, though his voice lacked conviction. Admiral, look around you. Your fleet is destroyed. Your crews are demoralized. Your cause is lost. You have two choices: continue fighting and watch your remaining people die for nothing, or surrender and live to see another day. The Empire does not surrender. Then perhaps it's time for a new empire, one built on different principles. The screen changed to show a joint human-Zephyrian command center, where officers from both species were working together, sharing data, coordinating their efforts. Commander Vexthai stood beside Admiral Chen, no longer as a conqueror or a rebel, but as an ally. Admiral Corthax, Vexthai said, addressing his former comrade. The old empire is dying. It began to die the moment we were ordered to murder children for the crime of wanting to remain free. What you see here is the beginning of something new, an alliance based on mutual respect rather than domination. Traitor? Corthax spat. Perhaps. But if treason means refusing to participate in genocide, then I accept the label with honor. Admiral Chen stepped forward. Admiral Corthax, humanity is prepared to offer terms. Surrender your remaining forces, and we guarantee safe treatment for all prisoners. More than that, we offer the chance to join us in building something better than what came before. Join you? You're offering to let Imperial forces join a human alliance? I'm offering to let Zephyrian people join a coalition of free worlds. The difference matters. For long minutes, silence filled the space between the fleets. Finally, Admiral Corthax spoke. What are your terms? Complete surrender of all Imperial forces in this system. Cessation of all hostile activities against Earth. Cooperation in establishing diplomatic relations with the Zephyrian government. And a commitment to helping us build a new kind of galactic civilization. And if I refuse? Chen's expression hardened. Then we destroy your remaining ships and send a message to your Emperor that Earth is now under the protection of the Free Worlds Alliance, and any further aggression will be met with the combined forces of humanity and our Zephyrian allies. Admiral Corthax looked around his ruined bridge, at his defeated fleet, at the impossible sight of humans and Zephyrians working together as equals. Everything he had believed about Imperial superiority, about the natural order of galactic civilization, had been proven false. I surrender, he said finally. The Imperial Home Guard surrenders to the Earth Defense Alliance. The words that followed were broadcast across the galaxy, transmitted on every frequency that could reach Zephyrian space. This is Admiral Corthax of the Imperial Home Guard. I hereby formally surrender all Imperial forces to the Earth Defense Alliance. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the Zephyrian Empire's attempt to conquer Earth has failed. The humans have proven that freedom is stronger than tyranny, that conscience is more powerful than orders, and that some principles are worth dying for. In the months that followed, the effects of Earth's victory rippled across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire found itself facing rebellions on dozens of worlds, as species that had been forcibly integrated began demanding their independence. The psychological warfare techniques developed by humanity spread to other civilizations, proving that even primitive species could resist technologically superior oppressors. Commander Vextai, now serving as the first Zephyrian ambassador to Earth, stood in the United Nations Assembly Hall 6 months after the battle. Around him sat representatives from 12 species that had broken free from Imperial control, all seeking to join what was being called the Free Worlds Alliance. Honored delegates, he began, his words translated into dozens of languages. 6 months ago I came to this world as a conqueror. I believed that superior technology granted the right to rule, that resistance to authority was futile, that the strong naturally dominated the weak. He paused, looking out at the assembly of beings who had proven him wrong. Humanity taught me otherwise, not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through the power of an idea, that freedom is the birthright of all intelligent life. That resistance to tyranny is not just a right, but a moral obligation. That true strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the courage to stand up for what is right. The assembly was silent, hanging on every word. Today, we are not here as conquerors and conquered, as masters and slaves. We are here as equals, united by the belief that all beings deserve the right to determine their own destiny. The Free Worlds Alliance is more than a military coalition. It is a declaration that the age of galactic empires built on force and fear is ending. As Vextai concluded his speech, the assembly erupted in applause that lasted for several minutes. In the back of the hall, Admiral Chen watched with satisfaction as former enemies became allies, as the principles humanity had fought to defend spread to species across the galaxy. Later, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Vextai approached Chen with something that might have been a smile on his alien features. "General Chen," he said, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you." "What's that, Ambassador?" "That first conversation we had when you claimed to know about my family, when you threatened the safety of Zephyrian civilians, was any of that real?" Chen smiled. "Not a word of it. We had no ability to threaten anyone beyond Earth's atmosphere. It was all psychological warfare, making you afraid of capabilities we didn't actually possess." "Remarkable," Vextai mused. "You defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy using nothing but cleverness and determination." "No," Chen corrected him. "We defeated tyranny using the one weapon that tyranny can never overcome. The idea that freedom is worth fighting for. And mercy," Vextai added quietly. "When we surrendered, when we were at your mercy, you chose to show compassion rather than revenge. That may have been your greatest victory of all." Chen nodded, remembering the moment when Admiral Corthax had spoken those words that had started it all. "Please, human, show me mercy." "Mercy," she replied, "is what separates civilization from barbarism. It's what makes us worthy of the freedom we fought to defend." As night fell over the Earth, ships from a dozen worlds hung peacefully in orbit, no longer an invasion fleet, but the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. A true alliance of free peoples, bound together not by conquest but by choice. The age of empire was ending, the age of freedom had begun, and it had all started with a species that refused to surrender, even when surrender was the only logical choice.